This is so cool. We've been getting a lot of storms in California, and it's completely reshaped a lot of these beaches. So many new patterns and formations to focus on. Let me show you what this looks like real quick. So just check that out. So cool. All up and down this beach, there's all these different formations, smaller, bigger, different shapes, different textures. It's all very overwhelming. So I think I need to take some time to really explore and decide how I want to compose this. But I think it's worth popping out the tripod real quick. This is what it looks like at about 28 millimeters. And then if I go ahead and zoom in here, that's what it is at about 200 millimeters. So get a lot more detailed with the patterns. I think I might like it a little bit wider though, something in between. Now you might be wondering, 28 all the way to 200, what lens are you using? I haven't seen this before. This is actually a brand new lens that I just picked up, and this is my first real photo shoot to test it out. This video is not sponsored, but this is the Tamron 28 to 200 millimeter. I picked this up on my own, paid full price. It's a lens I've been eyeballing for a really long time. I wanted something that kind of can just do it all. And I'm sure this lens, especially for the price, it wasn't that expensive in comparison to, you know, all the higher end lenses you can buy. I'm sure this lens makes some compromises, but it's just so nice to have this lens on here and feel like I kind of don't need anything else. So far I really like that aspect, but basically we're gonna go around today, do a bunch of abstract photography. This is not gonna be a crazy technical lens review. This is more of just a photography adventure, and I'll give you my practical thoughts on if this lens is good for landscape photography. All right, so right now I'm able to do about 1/10 of a second, f/16 and ISO 100. Let's see how this turns out. So here's my first photograph of those patterns. I really liked all the swirly shapes here, and how you have this nice X shape created by all of those lines converging right towards the middle. This helped to create some symmetry and give some organization to the chaos. This photo was taken looking straight down, then I decided to angle my camera upwards, and then I shot this one. In this photo you get to see more of the 3D shapes to the patterns, and with this one I went with a completely different processing style. This time really focusing on the bright areas of the highlights and really accentuating those rich blues in the shadows. I always find it interesting how a slight shift of perspective can completely change what a subject looks like. I think this might be the best patch yet. This is so cool. So the ridges are a little deeper, and there's this really stark contrast between the brighter parts of the sand and the darker parts. It's just got some really, really nice distinct shapes and already a lot of contrast. Just look at these patterns. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. If you were to just walk by and glance at a scene like this, it might just appear to be a patch of dirt. But the more I started analyzing all of these shapes and patterns, the more I started to see a completely different world. These shapes in here are almost a bit eerie. In this photo, I kind of see ghosts, or the faces of some kind of strange creatures. This image was shot fairly wide at about 38 millimeters, but then I wanted to get a lot closer so that I could simplify some of these shapes. Just kind of experimenting with some different angles, seeing how I could simplify the edges here. I want to really pull the viewer's attention into the image here. I was working hard exploring different perspectives here, and then I stumbled upon something really interesting, and here it is. This was definitely one of the most distinct patterns that I found on the beach that day. And to me, this image really does look like the face of some sort of ghostly creature. But now I'd be curious to hear from you. Do you also see a face of some kind in this photograph? Or do you have another interpretation? Please let me know in the comments. After photographing those beautiful patterns, I wandered around a nearby stream to see if I could find any interesting shapes along the water's edge. So I followed the river over here to find more patterns, and there's some beautiful, beautiful shapes in here. And what's nice is since the mud is all wet, it's creating some really cool reflections too. The only problem with reflections is it creates this really big mirror in the actual pool of water and kind of just doesn't look all that appealing. But if I show you the patterns here, check this out. They look really, really beautiful. Even over here, there's these nice patches. I want to create a little bit more contrast with this scene, and I actually have a polarizer right here. And watch what happens when I put this on to the camera. So if I twist this, you can see just how much it changes the scene. It's really amazing. The little bits of water become a lot darker here, but you're still getting those nice reflections off of the sand. So I think I'm gonna try and compose this here, maybe trying some shots that are more zoomed in like that, because I can kind of shift my composition and really focus on the swooshing of these lines. But just a really cool shape, and I love the colors here. Now these were just a few test shots, but I found it so interesting just how much that polarization affected the entire photograph. In this version with full polarization, you can see some of the colors shine through, but it did completely get rid of the directionality to the light. And then in this version with no polarization, you can see a lot of that directionality, but the colors don't really shine through. So when using a tool like this, it's important to understand what your intention is when you're taking the photograph. What exactly are you trying to focus on? Is it the colors? Is it the light? Is it the shapes? Because sometimes using a polarizer will add really interesting elements to the photograph, and then other times it might actually take away the interesting elements. Oh my gosh. The light just peeked out of the clouds and this looks amazing. Check out this lighting right now. This is just unreal. So dramatic now. I'm so excited to kind of go home, check these files, and see just how different this lighting is than the previous more diffuse lighting. I love how in this image my mind starts to wander, and rather than see just a pond, I start to see an aerial perspective of sand dunes. That warm, dramatic golden light really helped to accentuate that. Using the 28 to 200 millimeter to shoot these was really a treat because I was able to switch from a wide-angle perspective to a telephoto perspective in seconds. This allowed me to be really versatile and work quickly with the changing light. So far, I was really enjoying using this lens, but I'm going to share more technical details and my overall thoughts towards the end of the video. After playing around in the sand, I thought it would be fun to photograph some different rock formations. So I wandered to a different part of the coast where I could shoot some beautiful Tafani patterns where these little polished pebbles from the shore end up in these pockets with the shifting tides. All right, so I found just one more subject to shoot right here, and found this really cool rock. So here's what the rock looks like from a wide angle perspective, but as soon as you zoom in here, just check this out. This is so cool. So as far as my settings go, I'm bumping my ISO a bit because it's a little bit windy and I don't want to do too long of an exposure. And then I'm doing f16 to try and get as much in focus as possible. You know what? I'm not gonna lie. This looks pretty good with diffused light even. I mean, the sunset light earlier was really beautiful, but I may like this diffused lighting. This scene was so fun to photograph, and even though I don't mind the way some of these images turned out, I felt like I could have done a better job with a bit more time and some more consistent lighting. So this just gets me more excited to revisit this spot on the coast in a future video. Let me show you just a few more of my favorite mud patterns that I found from this day. So this has really become my favorite lens for landscape photography, and I'll tell you why. It's because sometimes I just don't feel like packing an entire kit worth of gear. I feel like sometimes the amount of gear becomes a restriction in what I end up wanting to do. When I film these vlogs, I'm bringing multiple camera bodies, tons of lenses, 2 tripods, extra audio equipment. So for when I'm not filming videos, I wanted to have a quick, lightweight setup where I could throw one lens, one camera into a bag and not even feel like I'm carrying camera gear. I even purchased a tiny little travel tripod, which also fits in a consumer bag or a hiking bag. Again, this video is not sponsored by either, but I'm going to go ahead and leave a link in the description for all of that stuff. This has really encouraged me to take my camera on a lot more adventures, including longer hikes, and then in turn, I've been able to take a lot more images and be more creative without the gear restrictions. So some quick technical details about this lens. I've been able to capture about 90 to 95% of what I've needed on my landscape photography adventures. Now, the other 5 to 10%, there's the occasion where I wish this lens was a little bit wider, and on those instances I would bring an ultra wide lens with me, like a 14 or 16 millimeter. And then of course, if you know my work, you know I absolutely love zooming into 400 to capture those little details, so I don't think this lens is going to replace the 100-400 for me. At 28 millimeters using 2.8, the edges get a bit soft and you have some pretty heavy distortion and vignetting when it comes to the wide angle side of this lens. That's really easy to remove in post though. The autofocus worked great even when I was filming videos, and every image I captured here was tack sharp. Gear aside, next time you're out in field, make sure you're looking around a little deeper into the landscape, because you really never know what you'll find when you look just a little bit closer. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.